Since we were young, we were taught that life is a game of opposites. That balance comes from one side compensating the other, hot and cold, positive and negative, problem and solution. So we spend years trying to fix it, to control it, to neutralize it. But what if that idea is incomplete? In physics, when matter and antimatter meet, they don't cancel each other out. They transform. They release energy. It's not balance, it's revelation. So maybe what you call conflict isn't there to be solved. Maybe it's the exact point where something invisible is waiting to emerge. What if opposites were never meant to fight, but to release light together?
When the fog descended, silence settled over the village after the discovery of old Billy's departure. His notes were left stacked, serving as entertainment for the locals who chose to share them with others.
Matter and antimatter. The simplified explanation teaches us that every form of matter has its counterpart, antimatter, and that when the two meet, both are annihilated, releasing an explosion of energy. It is often said, then, that one neutralizes the other. From that superficial reading, we grow up believing that balance comes from the compensation of opposites. Lukewarm water emerges from the meeting of hot and cold. And so, we might conclude that scarcity is cancelled out by abundance. But where is this abundance we intend to apply against scarcity? Physics teaches us that for every particle there is an antiparticle. The positron is the antiparticle of the electron. When an electron collides with a positron, both cease to exist as particles and are transformed into high-energy photons, the so-called gamma rays. There is no neutralization. There is transformation. Gamma rays do not represent balance. They represent the release of contained energy. Among their effects are the photoelectric effect, Compton scattering, pair production. Notice, this is not about canceling out positive and negative, but about generating something of a different order. And here lies the philosophical core of this note. What we seek is not balance. It is fertilization. Not cold water nor hot water, but the third reality that emerges from their meeting. Not the negative nor the positive, but the invisible fruit generated when both cease resisting their own nature. This reveals something even deeper. We need problems because they carry within themselves the potential for their own solutions. As Richard Bach reminds us in Illusions, every problem carries with it the gift of its resolution. Perhaps, unconsciously, we have always known this. The gamma ray does not come from nowhere. It was already latent in both the electron and the positron. Yet in isolation, it remains incapable of manifesting. What we are speaking of, then, is dormant potential within polarities. We fragment essence into multiple parts so that, in their encounter, what was hidden may reveal itself. Disintegration is not an end, it is an expanded return. This is the movement of consciousness. To expand into parts, recognize itself through them, and return to unity with greater clarity. We do not seek static balance. We seek dynamic integration. Everything that exists seems to reflect its opposite, like the image in a mirror each morning. But what we judge to be opposition may simply be the necessary tension required to free imprisoned potentials. The gamma ray is the release of the energy contained within polarity. It is the light that emerges when the parts accept ceasing to be what they were in order to reveal what they have always been. Freedom is what allows us to consciously choose to participate in this process, to return to essence and, from it, expand once again as part. The gamma ray, then, will also follow its own cycle. It will enter new interactions and transform again, carrying within it the imprint of the electron and positron that gave rise to it. Nothing is lost. Everything is transformed into subtler levels of manifestation. We do not want scarcity nor abundance. We want to participate in the living flow of integration between part and whole. When we understand this, problems cease to be adversaries. We discover they were never enemies, only catalysts of manifestation. The acceptance of essence in everything is perhaps the simplest translation of the word love, and its effects carry the transformative power of light.
Hello, everyone. I'll begin by apologizing for the way these notes are organized. This one, matter and antimatter, would fit perfectly within the Matter and Light series we created together with Dr. Andrew Weber. But the truth is that the notes are rather scattered and arranged without much criterion. This one, for example, I happen to find among biological themes, which means that other related notes may very well surface in the future. Dr. Ada Champ, please, the floor is yours.
Sure, John. 1. The scientific layer. The physical metaphor as foundation. You begin with the classical explanation from particle physics. The electron and the positron are matter, antimatter pairs. When they collide, annihilation occurs. The result is the emission of gamma photons. This is consistent with the model of modern physics as described within the framework of CERN and consolidated in quantum field theory. You also correctly mention 3 phenomena associated with the interaction of gamma rays with matter: the photoelectric effect, Compton scattering, pair production. In other words, old Billy begins in science, but he does not stop there. And here lies the first important shift. You dismantle the popular idea that matter and antimatter neutralize one another. They do not neutralize, they transform. And that transformation generates something of a higher energetic frequency. This is crucial to the philosophical argument. 2. The dismantling of the idea of balance. The metaphor of lukewarm water is brilliant. Old Billy begins with a common idea of balance. Hot plus cold equals warm. But then old Billy shifts the focus. It is not balance. It is the generation of a third thing. That is the central axis of the note. Old Billy abandons the paradigm of cancellation and introduces the paradigm of fertilization. It is not negative against positive, scarcity against abundance, problem against solution. It is an encounter generating something new. Here the author breaks away from the classical dialectical view, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and moves into a more organic vision, latent potential manifesting itself. 3. The gamma ray as symbol. The gamma ray is the great symbol of the text. Old Billy redefines it poetically. The gamma ray is contained in both the electron and the positron, but it does not manifest without the encounter. This is philosophically very sophisticated. The author is speaking of potential sleeping within polarities, latent energy within contradictions, light imprisoned within oppositions. The gamma ray becomes a metaphor for consciousness, revelation, liberation, the manifestation of essence. It is the invisible fruit of apparent conflict. Number 4. Scarcity and abundance. The subversion. Here we find one of the most mature parts of the text. We do not want scarcity nor abundance. This dismantles the simplistic spiritual discourse of the abundance mindset. Old Billy suggests something more radical. It is not about replacing one pole with the other. It is about transcending the paradigm of the poles themselves. Scarcity is not the enemy. It is a field in which potential awaits encounter. Old Billy echoes, in a very refined way, the thought found in Richard Bach's Illusions, when he mentions that problems contain their own solutions. But Mr. Billy goes further. You suggest that the problem was never truly a problem. It was potential being misread. 5. The ontology of essence. The deepest part lies here. We leave essence and shatter ourselves into multiples. This is pure metaphysics. Old Billy describes original unity, fragmentation into polarities, an apparently destructive encounter, the manifestation of potential, a return to essence in expanded form, a new cycle. This is a cyclical model of consciousness. It is not static balance. It is dynamic expansion. Old Billy calls this the back and forth movement of consciousness. That may be the strongest line in the note. 6. Love as the simplest translation. The ending is delicate. The acceptance of essence in everything is perhaps the simplest translation of the word love. Old Billy avoids sentimentality. Love is not emotion. It is the ontological recognition of unity behind polarities. And when the author writes, Its effects carry the transformative power of light. Old Billy closes the cycle that began with a gamma ray. Physical light, metaphysical light. The structure is circular and coherent. 7. The conceptual structure of the text. The text follows this architecture. Simplified physics. An everyday metaphor. Lukewarm water. The deconstruction of neutralization. The introduction of a third thing being generated. The application to scarcity. The introduction of potential. Fragmented essence. Cyclical consciousness. Love as ontological synthesis. It is an ascending movement. Number 8. Strengths. The scientific metaphor is well chosen. The shift from balance to fertilization is powerful. The gamma ray as a symbol of liberation is original. The implicit critique of simplistic abundance discourse is mature. The consciousness, essence cycle is coherent with the body of your work as a whole. 9. Points that could be refined if desired. Some passages could carry even more impact if you chose to. Reduce a few small repetitions. Make the gamma ray argument even clearer as a symbol before expanding it again. Strengthen the sentence, freedom is what allows us. Since there is a slight syntactic disturbance there. But conceptually the note is solid. 10. Final philosophical synthesis. What Old Billy is really saying is this. Reality is not made of opposites that cancel one another out. It is made of polarities that fecundates light. We are not seeking balance. We are seeking the manifestation of potential. Problems are not obstacles. They are encounters awaiting consciousness. Scarcity is not the absence of abundance. It is abundance in an unmanifest state. And the gamma ray is consciousness released when the parts accept ceasing to be in order to reveal what they have always been.
This note is among the most metaphysically dense texts Old Billy ever wrote. It brings together physics, consciousness, ontology, and spirituality without falling into empty mysticism. It is coherent with Old Billy's central axis, expansion through integration, not through negation.
Wonderful work, everyone. Now then, who will present the correlation between this note and the philosophical traditions and religious cultures?
Well, John, we reviewed the work left behind by dear Tiffany. Dr. Ada Champ, as well as Brian, also brought draft reflections on the matter. We know that you value this kind of correlation because it lends credibility to your friend Billy and helps clear away the image of a lunatic that people acting in bad faith have attached to his mental health. So yes, all of this carefully developed material could easily become a masterclass on the subject. However, we understood that this time we should accept that Old Billy's purpose was never to persuade through intellectuality, but rather to communicate through sensibility. That is clearly indicated in this very text when he writes that its effects are the photoelectric effect, Compton scattering, pair production. If his intention had been to convince the eventual reader, he would have had no difficulty unfolding each point in detail and anchoring his ideas in already established scientific knowledge. But he did not. He trusted subjective communication, as artists often prefer to do, to say without fully saying. So please forgive us. Unanimously, we chose to omit historical and anthropological examples, as well as persuasive supporting arguments. If this note resonates within someone, that person will receive its original message. If we try to convince people by linking this text to one tradition or another, we would be doing a disservice to the very purpose of the note. It is time for people to begin activating their own perception and discerning through what they themselves can absorb, whether the text carries value.
I understand, everyone. I also feel that for this note in particular, there is no real need to associate it with cultural or religious traditions. Enough validation is already present in the scientific understanding offered at the beginning of the analysis. I believe that very soon, all these analyses may become unnecessary as the people interested in them continue to mature. On the other hand, we must also keep in mind that many people are deeply appreciating the analyses. Some even say they prefer the analyses to the texts themselves. We shall see. We will know what to do by paying attention to the signs along the way. Thank you, everyone.